You might think you know what a globe looks like. After all, you've probably seen them in school. But what if I told you that our Earth isn't actually a globe? You might think I'm crazy, but hear me out. Sure, the Earth is round like a globe, but it's not perfect. You see, the Earth is actually a bit wider at the equator than it is tall, and that means that our globes are actually a bit off. They're not perfectly accurate representations of the Earth. But why is the Earth wider at the equator? Well, it's all because of gravity. The Earth has a lot of stuff on it, trees, houses, cars, all sorts of things. And all that stuff has a gravitational pull. And that gravitational pull is what makes the Earth a bit wider at the equator. But why is it squished at the poles? Well, that's because the Earth is spinning. It's rotating on its axis about once every 27 days. And that means that everything on the Earth is moving to the east very fast, about 900 miles per hour. And that creates a force called inertia. Inertia makes it feel like there's a force pushing you away from the center of the Earth. And that force is stronger at the poles because the Earth is spinning faster at the equator. So at the poles, the Earth is a bit squished because of inertia. But it's also squished for another reason. The stuff at the poles is closer to the center of the Earth, where gravity is stronger. So the forces are kind of balanced. At the equator, though, the forces aren't balanced. There's a stronger force pulling down than there is pushing out. So overall, the Earth is a bit wider at the equator than it is tall. And by how much? Well, the Earth is about 43,000 kilometers wide at the equator and about 40,000 kilometers tall. So it's about 1.2 kilometers wider than it is tall, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't mention these extra kilometers in my last video where I talked about the size of the Earth. And that's because they don't really matter for most purposes. When we talk about the size of the Earth, we're usually talking about its circumference at the equator, which is about 40,000 kilometers. So those extra kilometers at the poles don't really make a big difference. However, they do make a difference for some things, like, for example, measuring the area of the Earth. If you want to measure the area of the Earth, you need to use a formula that takes into account the fact that the Earth is a bit wider at the equator. Otherwise, you'll get a wrong answer. But how do you know how much wider the Earth is at the equator? Well, you can measure it. Scientists have done it all sorts of ways. One way is to use satellites. Satellites can measure the distance between 2 points on the surface of the Earth very accurately, and they've measured the distance between 2 points at the equator. They found that the distance at the equator is about 43,000 kilometers, while the distance between the same 2 points at the poles is about 40,000 kilometers. Another way to measure the size of the Earth is to use ships. You can send 2 ships out to sea, each equipped with a device that can measure the angle between the horizon and the North Star. Then when the ships are lined up with the North Star, you can measure the distance between them. And that distance will be the circumference of the Earth. This method has been used for centuries, and it's actually how we learned the size of the Earth in the first place. But no matter how you measure it, you'll find that the Earth is about 1.2 kilometers wider at the equator than it is tall. So the next time you look at a globe, remember that it's not perfectly accurate. The Earth is actually a bit wider at the equator. But that's okay. It just means that we have a little bit more to learn about our planet. Thanks for watching.